Mindfulness doesn't have to be such a formal practice. It can be brought into the things that we do day to day. And I love that way of looking at it. And you can think of it as paying attention to the present moment on purpose without any judgment.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
Hey, Hadar, are you feeling a little bit mindful today?
I am. Today we're talking about my favorite organ in the body, the brain. Well, no, just kidding. Of course, it's the skin, but
it's all derived from the same embryological origin, my friend.
Oh, see, I knew you'd find that connection.
I just went nerd on you. Totally.
Yes, you did. You totally nerded me out, but that's okay because we need to make those connections because after all, the first thing we need to remember as skin professionals is that the skin is connected to the rest of the patient. And why not start with the brain, shall we?
I think so. And we've got an expert on that's going to talk to us from a naturopathic perspective, but she's also been invested in quite a bit of research and in the clinic as well. We have Dr. Jessica Maloh, who we've had on before, but now we can call you doctor because you are now licensed in California. And so that's pretty exciting. Welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be speaking with you guys today.
Great to have you here. So I think we want to start with some mindfulness practices. And for those of us who don't follow routinely the literature or just don't know what mindfulness is, can you help us understand what that means?
Absolutely. I think that's a great starting point. So mindfulness doesn't have to be such a formal practice. It can be brought into the things that we do day to day. And I love that way of looking at it. And you can think of it as paying attention to the present moment on purpose without any judgment. So that itself could be mindfulness. And so whether you are driving to work, whether you're in the shower, whether you're doing a seated meditation, all of these activities could include mindfulness.
Got it. Because I think a lot of people confuse it with meditation, and it doesn't have to be. I think I like your approach because in modern life, we tend to always either think about the past and really kind of hold grudges, even small little grudges to ourselves, even, right? Oh man, I ate that cookie and I shouldn't have, and kind of carry that forward, but also be very anxious about what's coming up next. Oh, I have this big interview. Oh, I have this class coming up, the test coming up. I have a big date. Everything really makes us very nervous. There's a bill coming up. I don't have enough money to pay for this. It's so anxiety provoking that we all live in that tension between the past and the future. And then we forget about being in the present, which is so important for us, not just from a mental point of view, actually biologically can affect us, right?
Absolutely. And with that, I think sometimes feeling like we need to make time for a meditative practice or a mindfulness practice and not being able to can sometimes maybe contribute to guilt or anxiety. And that's why I'm also so passionate about talking about these other methods that we can bring it into our everyday life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an hour that we set aside. It's wonderful if it can be, but there's some research showing that even 15 minutes once a week can make a difference to how we feel. And so I'd love to share one study with you guys that looked at a group of people who all went on a 15-minute walk. Half were instructed to go on a walk with a certain attitude of mindfulness, which was a beginner's mind or this childlike curiosity, maybe seeing things as if we were looking at them for the first time while they were on this outdoor walk. And they found that at the end of the study, those who brought this awe perspective on their walks had significant increases in joy. They were also instructed to take photos after each walk, and they found that over time they had increasing smile intensity. And they noticed that with each photo over time, those who did the awe walk, they had more of the nature background in the photos, and the authors attributed that to feeling like we're a part of something greater than ourselves. And all it was 15 minutes once a week. And so I think these small things that we can do can have a lot of impact on how we feel.
When was the last time you took a 15-minute walk, Hadar?
Oh man, I translate it to stop and smell the roses, right? That old
Yes.
saying, right?
Yeah.
Just pay attention to what's going on around you. So walking is part of mindfulness. Can you give us some other examples of practices? Because again, like I said, I think a lot of us are kind of stuck in the idea that, oh, I need to kind of have and sit in a circle somewhere on a mountain, pay thousands of dollars to go away to some inspiring location like in India or somewhere. Is that true? It sounds like there's other ways to do this. Can you list a few of those practices that are super easy to do?
For sure. So we also know that movement could be a great source of joy and also an opportunity to bring mindfulness to our body. And there's one thing that I've been recommending to some patients as well, and it's a joy workout. And this is an 8-minute workout that's been put together by Dr. Kelly McGonigal. She's someone that became well known for her TED Talk on how to make stress your friend. But there's research to certain movements like reaching, swaying, bouncing to a beat that are associated with happiness. And this is an activity that for 8 minutes a day could also have a shift in our mind and our body. And I want to talk a little bit about how different mindfulness exercises or practices, when done in even just small amounts, can affect us on a physiological level, maybe even clinically. So there's one study that looked at a part of MBSR, which is a mindfulness based stress reduction program. And it's an 8-week program, but in this particular study, they only used some of the meditation tapes that are played when people who had psoriasis were going in for phototherapy. And so they listened to an audio recording that got them to pay attention to their breathing, that got them to pay attention to sensations in their body, maybe got them to visualize the UV rays helping slow the growth and division of skin cells. And they would listen to this only when they were waiting to go into the light booth and while they were in it. And they found that over time, those who did their conventional treatments and had this audio tape playing reached the halfway point with significantly less sessions than those who didn't. So again, even small little bits that we can include mindfulness into our day, they can make a big
Was
difference.
this for psoriasis?
Yeah, the study was specifically for patients with psoriasis.
You know, Hadar, I don't know if you do a lot of phototherapy. We do a ton of phototherapy, and I've been thinking more about just including audio tapes just for them to almost maybe pass the time. Because I do wonder what people think about when they're standing in that booth, for like 2, 3 minutes. I
Right.
wonder if it's just like a big countdown for them or if there's a more active way to be positive in there.
Right. And I wonder if it also increased compliance, right? Because that's one of the challenges. I mean, I wouldn't call it compliance. It's just really, really tricky to find a way to get to a certain location 3 times a week. It's not easy, at least in the beginning. So I wonder if that also increased just positive feeling about the whole experience and increased compliance so they can reach their goal much faster. Absolutely fascinating. I also remember myself taking the course, and one of the exercises we did was with eating, which most of us will associate with a negative kind of thing nowadays because we eat and we think, oh my God, I have to watch my diet. But actually, mindfulness practice can be just taking any food that you're going to eat and just paying attention to the bite, what you're tasting, what is the taste of the food, the texture. Really being in the moment, being present with the food that you're eating can also be just a simple example of being mindful of what you're actually doing.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point. Did you do it with the raisin in your
The
program?
raisin exercise, absolutely correct.
I had the
Yes.
blueberry, guys. I had the blueberry. I thought about everything about that blueberry. It was the most satisfying blueberry I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I, th-
But
I
yeah,
think for dermatologists, they pick the raisin because of the wrinkles, so they want us to, but
did
I
the
don't know.
raisin become a grape afterwards, Hadar? Did it revert?
I don't know. I think it does not change the neurotoxin concentration in my saliva. Anyways,
The good news is that this exercise could be brought to all the foods or all the meals that we have. And it has been studied in different groups of people, bringing mindfulness to eating. And I think it's important because, especially if we're trying to be on a weight management protocol, I think we're trying to not think about eating, but there's actually a lot of good that can come from really paying attention to how we're feeling when we're eating food, really focusing in on chewing, the flavors, the textures, the smell. And there was one study that looked at a group of people who did 4 sessions of a mindfulness training. And this included things like a body scan, paying attention to thoughts they might have around food, maybe engaging in a progressive muscle relaxation exercise. And they were also instructed to prolong their chewing, where the food became more liquefied before swallowing. And they found that the people who did these practices had weight loss, they had food cravings decrease, and emotional eating decrease. And what's also really cool was they found that the weight loss in this group was maintained after a 4-week follow up. So, this can definitely be helpful for weight management, but if we're looking at it in the realm of dermatology, there are certain conditions that may improve with weight management, maybe things like psoriasis or HS. So, mindfulness can be brought to nutrition and through that to dermatology as well.
You know what's interesting about that, actually, I have to say, is when you're talking about different sorts of approaches with just chewing. I've read a previous study before, and I don't know if either of you are mindful of this, no pun intended there, although we try to do dad joke central here. But in general, like when you first are really hungry and you start eating, there are studies showing that you chew the food less and just swallow and go to the next gulp. And that one way to keep your stomach kept up in terms of hunger with your mind and your taste buds is to thoughtfully chew more in the very beginning, so that you, yes, you're hungry and you're getting the taste in, but you don't overeat out of the gate, and then you overeat and then you're like, bloated at the end of it all, and you can pace yourself much better. I don't know if either of you have heard about this.
Right. And I was going to say with the bloating, I think if we're able to bring more mindfulness to eating and we're able to slow things down, we know that there's a gut brain axis. And if we're having a meal while we're in a fight or flight state versus in a rest or digest state, it's going to affect how well we digest and absorb our nutrients. So maybe not only for a weight management perspective, but in really getting all the benefits as optimally as possible from what we're eating through a mindfulness practice.
Well, Jess, let's talk a little bit more about mindfulness and how you use it in the clinic, because, as a naturopathic doctor, you are seeing people not just for their dermatological concerns, because, obviously people will come in with some dermatology concerns, but people come with other concerns too, right? Typically around stress, or if it's around weight management. How have you incorporated mindfulness? I know you do some intermittent fasting programs, but how have you incorporated mindfulness, or just the whole concept of the mind body connection into your protocols?
Absolutely. And I think it's a really important thing to talk about with patients, to ask about how they're feeling with the concerns or health goals that they might come in with. Because at the end of the day, if I can help somebody feel better, I think that could be such a huge win. And so, whether it's anxiety or low back pain or hair loss, I think there could definitely be conversation around stress and stress management. A program that I really like to recommend and that I've previously mentioned just briefly is MBSR, so mindfulness based stress reduction. It's an 8-week program. It's been studied for a variety of different conditions at this point, and it's one that is structured, and you have the opportunity to do it in a group setting. And so there's also this community that can come from it. There is a mindfulness teacher that can provide you guidance along the way. And there is a resource, because sometimes the obstacle to signing up for MBSR could be the cost associated with it. So there's a website called Palouse Mindfulness, Palouse mindfulness.com. And it's a free resource for anybody to sign up for. They've got different meditation practices there. They'll walk you through the instructions and goals of each week. So I think it's a fabulous option for somebody who maybe wants to do it at their own pace as well and have some good resources to access. And even in the fasting protocols that you've mentioned, Dr. Subhamani, with things like Prolon, which is a fasting mimicking diet, we like to include mindfulness in there. And so with that, while patients are undergoing this maybe nutritional reset, we tie in some journaling. So they will reflect on how certain foods are making them feel, or if they're having certain cravings, to kind of reflect on the situation that they're in. Are they stressed at the moment? Are they feeling anxious? And we also have them do different meditation exercises as well, whether it's a body scan, a seated meditation, an all walk. That's all embedded in the program, because I think when we can address the whole person, we are much more likely to have a greater impact.
No, that's really interesting. Now, one of the concerns that comes up with MBSR is that it's just a huge commitment. Like, seems like there's many weeks and you have to figure out and set aside time for it. And I know some people get intimidated by that. Is there a way that you can make this practical for people to dip their toe in there and become comfortable with it? Or how do you approach it with your patients that might not be able to take MBSR, the full, because obviously the full blown program clearly has all kinds of goodies for people. But what about those folks that say, I might not have time? How do they still engage?
For sure. I think sharing with patients some of the research around these practices that are shorter in length and less of a commitment, letting them know they've also been studied to have benefit is encouraging, because I think sometimes in our minds we feel that to get the benefit of meditation, we should maybe be doing it for an hour at a time, which is a great thing to do if you are able to. But when it's difficult, knowing that 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an 8-minute workout could shift our headspace and shift our emotions, I think that's encouraging for patients to know. So we'll talk to them about all walks, enjoy workouts. I'll talk to them about the psoriasis study I shared as well, with a few minutes potentially making a difference in how quickly they are able to clear. But there are other practices as well. I think people also enjoy journaling, and it doesn't have to be a super formal practice either. I think one of the attitudes that's also taught in MBSR is gratitude. And so even maybe having a list of 3 things they're grateful for in the morning and then doing that again a few minutes before they go to sleep, I think could also help bring mindfulness to their day to day. And also, I think when they're journaling and they know they're going to be doing it for the next few days, you are maybe more primed to recognize the good that happens in each day, just because it's on your list of things that you're going to have to reflect upon at the end of the day. So I think it also shifts your perspective and you're on the outlook for the positive things around us as well.
Now, you know what? Taking a step back from this, I mean, Hadar, and we've talked about this, so many people dealing with burnout. And whether it's a patient, whether it's a practitioner, I mean, you just went through a list of a lot of things that you don't have to necessarily do all of them, right? I mean, the point is you could select from any of these and just pay attention to them and try to do them with earnest, and it'll start shifting your mindset rather than just, thinking about stress reduction. You might change your mindset, and that means you're changing your lifestyle. We always think changing your lifestyle is exercise and nutrition, but the way you think about your life or the way you think about yourself is the lifestyle too. And I feel like that's what you're trying to key in on right here.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
I was actually thinking about this because it's not just getting back to the commitment of 8 weeks. And what you were saying, Jessica, is spot on, because what I found is that by learning this technique and kind of reminding myself where my mind should be, if possible, I don't have to do this the way the book has been written. I don't have to do the exercise with the raisin. I can take it to different places in my day to day. And then we all have these times during the day where we think we're very busy, but we find those moments where we can actually spend the time being more mindful. And then if you incorporate it into your day to day life, you realize you're actually going to do much more than a few minutes. And like Raja said, it's more of the way you start thinking about your own life and how you're going to carry it through. So I think starting the course, even if you don't know if you're going to finish it, just getting whatever you can out of it may actually serve you much more than you think.
Exactly. And I love what you mentioned, Hadar, as well, is that there could be different practices that resonate more with different people. And I like the course because it explores different types of mindfulness practices. And so if we really want to help patients adhere to a practice, I think giving them the option of various ways to have mindfulness in their day to day is important, because we want them to do the things that they enjoy. And with that as well, I think it's important to mention that it doesn't have to be a walk. It doesn't have to be a joy workout. It doesn't have to be a seated meditation. It might mean listening to music. It might mean dancing. It might mean playing music, spending time with family. And back to the beginning, maybe how we define mindfulness, so long as we can be in the present moment without judgment, that is a mindful moment.
Well, I have to say, it has been very mindful with the both of you during this podcast. And Jess, you've given us so many different options here and tools to think about. And what I really like about that is, the whole principle of integrative medicine or within dermatology is that we have options that we can give patients, whether it's conventional or herbal or something that deals with the topical or a topical botanical versus a pharmaceutical. People have options, and then they can see what works for them. Maybe they have to use all of them in the beginning, but then they dial it back and figure out what works. What I like about what you're doing here is you have options, and you don't have to just meditate. If that's something that resonates, great. Or pun intended there, by the way. Or if it's music, or if it's going to be something around journaling, which is totally taken off. I feel like people have options, and you start somewhere, just like what Hadar just said. Dip your toe in there, start, and you're probably going to get a benefit more than you realize. And I feel like you actually give us some practical tips here. So appreciate that. Guess what, Hadar? She is leading the mindfulness discussion session. So we're going to have all kind of mindfulness topics that are going to be coming up with case discussions at the upcoming IDS. So any thoughts on that, Jess? What is it that you're hoping that practitioners will take away from your session?
Oh, I'm so excited. I think it's a really important topic. There's a book I really like called When the Body Says No. It's by Dr. Gabor Mate, and in it, he talks about how even having the term mind and body is a little bit off because you can't separate the mind from the body. They're so interrelated. And I think having this conversation will highlight the importance of taking time to understand what's happening psychologically and emotionally. In a lot of dermatological conditions, there could be a bidirectional relationship with stress and the condition. And so I'm really looking forward to diving into things like atopic dermatitis, alopecia, and to do it with Dr. Kira Barr and Dr. Apple Bodemer. I think it's going to be incredibly insightful, and I'm so excited to share more.
So one of the things that comes up, because this is going to be such an exciting topic, is mechanism of action. And we love science where we can find it. We also love the art of medicine. So what is the science behind mindfulness? What do you think, or what has been shown in the literature to be how this works? What are the little neuron firings and the biochemical pathways that are making this happen? Obviously, it's much beyond that, but what do we know?
That's a great question. I think there's still a lot to be discovered. I think, of course, stress hormones will play a big role in a stressful state and how they could affect the gut and how these hormones could affect the skin. But also, we're learning that when we're stressed versus when we're in more of a parasympathetic state, there could be shifts in our immune system. And there was one study that we'll also get more into at the IDS that looked at immunological treatments alongside psychotherapy. And they found that when the two are coupled together, there's more of a likelihood for improvement. And the authors in this article, in their discussions, say that perhaps it's how mindfulness or being in a calm mental state can affect our immune system as well.
Right, absolutely. And you can think about cortisol level and the body and the skin itself. That can definitely relate to that. But you're right. I think we can definitely do much more in way of research. And that's what we're hoping to achieve with the Integrative Dermatology Symposium is bring all the curious minds to work together and try to come up with good protocols that will demonstrate the mechanism of action. Because what really we care about is that if we understand how an intervention works, we can actually get more out of it and hopefully get more people to buy in and do it. But even with little increments, Raj, as you mentioned, everybody can have another tool in their toolbox. And what I like about it, and especially that example you get from the psoriasis study, is that we never practice in a vacuum. And we never practice in a clinical trial setting, right? We never do one
Yeah,
intervention or
exactly.
just put a little cream and that's it. We never also treat a simple isolated biological system like a sheet of keratinocyte on a tissue plate. No, we treat full human being in front of us, which is made up of different belief systems and coming from different cultures. And then there's multiple biological systems. So having an intervention in your toolbox that actually really goes at everything seems to me like a powerful thing to have to work together with the rest of the other interventions that are more specific, right? We think about biologics as the ultimate, at least I think about it as the ultimate specific therapy. We're really kind of sending a targeted missile right there at the target. But then if we could incorporate something more holistic to treat the entire human being and help them improve their health overall, perhaps we're going to enhance the ability of drugs like biologics or narrowband UVB or whatever other medical interventions that we use commonly to work even better. So those are the studies I want to see.
Absolutely. And I think you raise a really good point too on the whole person, because I think even if these practices aren't necessarily on their own going to help a certain condition, even if we can get the patient feeling better while we're giving them these other therapies or just feeling better as they have this condition, that's still a huge win. Really focusing in on their quality of life and making any improvements that we can, I think, is something that's really important to also strive for.
Well, I have to say, this was an awesome session. We are looking forward to more discussion at the upcoming symposium. But more than that, thanks for taking us on a journey through what mindfulness means, what it can be, and how it can be practical. I think that's the point and the key takeaway I have from this podcast. And I want to thank you for joining us again, Jessica Maloh. And if you want to find her on TikTok, it's at Integrative Kitchen. And she's got all these cool little tidbits that she puts out there and includes nutrition, some mindfulness stuff as well. All right. Well, thanks, Jessica. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and we will see you again shortly, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode with Dr. Raja and Dr. Hadar. This podcast is brought to you by Learn Skin, leaders in integrative dermatology education. Visit learnskin.com/podcast to explore our many programs or subscribe to the podcast today and never miss an episode. Hey, have a great day and stay curious.